Alien Abduction in Hyperspace, a DMT trip report, posted by Stridency to earwid.org February 7th, 2016. I remember almost 2 years ago, reading on this site how the substance DMT affects our brains, bodies, spirits, or whatever else, also on many other different sites as well. DMT hyperspace, something I never would have ever imagined to be an actuality, to be an actual reality that may very well be real. I remember laughing at a site's FAQ, explaining the possibilities on how and what DMT does and/or is. Back then, I was 16 years old, and since that time, I've had experience with psilocybin mushrooms and LSD a great number of times, and they were, and still are, some of the most amazing and most beautiful experiences I've ever had in my entire life. Though sometimes the most terrifying as well. It wasn't until recently that I've obtained a large amount of DMT, and I was very much excited. I had extremely high expectations, and I've been waiting for more than 2 years to finally break through to DMT hyperspace. So here is my story. In the recent past and current present, I've been experimenting with large doses of DMT. At first, I started off with lower doses, getting a mild DMT body high and visuals, slightly similar to the peak of an LSD or psilocybin trip, but only lasting around 5 to 10 minutes, which sounds about right for the DMT experience. I was getting to these levels at first with a group of friends, as were they, but none of us ever came close to breaking into a hyperspace. I started to have my doubts, but I knew subconsciously that there was still more to the substance. I perhaps just hadn't perfected the technique in smoking it out of an oil burner or glass vaporizer. It wasn't until recently, when I finally perfected the process in vaporizing and smoking the substance, and reaching a hyperspace of some description. Colours would randomly appear in front of me, merging within everything, becoming one. It was an amazing thing, an amazing feeling, an amazing experience like no other, I thought to myself. I was getting to this place, assuming that this place was the highest level of DMT, and assuming this was the hyperspace that everybody was talking about. However, I was very wrong. The first time it happened, I was in my apartment by myself, away from friends, family, all of that. I did it sitting in a pretty comfortable game chair that I got for Christmas one year, which was set up in my room. I was able to get around 3 very large, very long hits in when it happened. It wasn't really like being shot out of a cannon into hyperspace or anything like that, but something different. It was more. Well, it was in fact a teleportation. I was teleported into an alien spaceship compartment, flying through space. I don't mean like it was kind of like an alien spaceship or something, or I thought it was an alien spaceship. Nah, it really was an alien spaceship. There weren't colours everywhere, and it wasn't like I travelled through hyperspace, or anything that had happened to me in the past. This was so real. It was so detailed in every possible way. It was like I was really there, in a spaceship. It was reality. I wasn't dreaming, tripping, anything like that. I was actually there. The entire time I sat there, I was unable to move, but I was just gazing in amazement at everything. And I felt this presence. I felt an alien presence above me, like they were watching me, observing me. It was almost as if they were talking to me telepathically, communicating with me through thought, trying to show me things, or perhaps that they were trying to experiment with me. I was so afraid, confused, yet amazed all at the same time. It seemed to me like I was there for almost an hour, and maybe I was. My perception of time was out of the window though, and my mind was in total shock. The last thing I remember while being in that spaceship is a strong telepathic signal from one of the aliens that triggered something inside of me. I was able to look down at my legs, my arms, seeing my bones twisting and turning, my hair building thicker and thicker. I was turning into a monkey, and it was so real, I just can't stress that enough. I was totally freaking out when everything just suddenly teleported back to my room, back to my reality. Even though the hyperspace and the aliens had gone, I was still tripping very hard. Everything around me was twisting and turning. My bones would still twist and turn if I looked at them long enough. When I looked in the mirror, I looked like I was an alien. Everything was just off, and it was so intense. This lasted for at least 30 minutes or so, which eventually faded as I laid in my bed, not being able to stop thinking, not being able to sleep. My entire body, mind, and spirit was in total awe. The next day, I told my roommate everything that had happened, and he, like myself, was always fascinated by DMT, and always joked about alien life forms and conspiracy theories and that sort of junk. However, he was very afraid of actually going to the places that were described as the DMT hyperspace. As much as he enjoyed reading and understanding the drug, he would not do it. He wasn't ready. After a long discussion on what I had experienced, I was actually convinced that I was contacted with a very intelligent alien life form through the DMT. I had this crazy theory, like the aliens knew I had DMT and were trying to contact me, show me things while I could see them when my third eye was activated. Crazy, right? Anyways, my friend said I should try it again tonight and see if I have a similar experience. I concluded to myself that I would in fact try it once again later that night. I did it in the same place, around the same time, with the same dose. This is my story of going beyond hyperspace, time, and life itself. Everything around me instantly began to change. It was so alien, so unbelievable. I could see energy coming up my body, telepathically communicating all through in and throughout my body. Energy was shifting around me. Life as I know it, showing me that there is so much more than the simple physical realm of fantasy that I live in. I was being told instantly that aliens were in fact very real, and I knew they were now. I knew that if this is happening right now, right here, then there is no way they are not real. It was so unexplainable, so intense, so real. What I was experiencing right now was nothing I have ever heard throughout readings on the internet or books about the drug. I was out of control. Life was out of control. I was in the middle of another transportation, except it was so much more intense. Right before my eyes, I had left this physical realm. I was able to look down and see once again my bones twisting and turning everywhere. My hair was growing again. I look up to scream, but it was too late. My head is thrown back as my spirit or brain is transformed into pure energy. Now, I am flowing through a network of systems, and I am one with the aliens. I am what they are. I am super intelligent. I know all the secrets of the world. Bam. Just like that, constant super intelligent information is transmitted into my brain by the aliens, who are energy like me. It all comes to me. The ultimate understanding. rhythms of the human conspiracy about life's deepest concepts can be broken into by the journey to an intergalactic hyperspace of universes. Entering into these worlds will produce realities of self-inflicted fantasies. However, they are real. Your body is in place, while your spirit is trying to leave and show you extraordinary things. Your mind will learn what your spirit has learned, and in the end, your ultimate individuality will grow as a force here on the planet Earth. Noisy sensations of parallel feelings towards distinction, triumph, and immortality, like realities, slam our brains from every single, most exact dimensional layers, according to the most advanced properties of physics. They're playing with me, laughing at me, showing me their world, explaining the many secrets of alien life, and the many secrets of the physical realm I'd been living on. I knew everything. I knew that I knew it was right. I still think it might be right. I am one with everyone. I am the universe. I can produce 1,000,000 words into actuality at once. And so can they. It was the most beautiful world of colours and life. Fairies and aliens, ghosts and angels. It was everything. It was the spiritual realm of existence. And they loved me so much. They told me so much. And they told me that I could come back whenever I wanted, and to bring as many friends as possible, because they will show them everything as well. When I started to finally come back to reality, I wasn't afraid about anything anymore. I didn't question life, and this is because I actually believed that I was just taught all of the secrets of the world. Right before I left the spiritual world, I was enhanced with a supercharge of energy, allowing me to have the most intense mind expansion anyone has ever imagined. I could create and do anything in my mind, and I could see it, like it was happening. I had a rush of euphoria, more intense than the greatest LSD and mushroom euphoria put together by 1,000,000. I still was in touch with aliens, but I could not see them. Not physically, that is. This feeling lasted, for at the least, an additional 40 to 50 minutes after the heaven I had just left. I smiled, looking down at a text from a roommate who'd been staying at his girlfriend's that week. "Well, what happened, man? How did it go? Did you see the aliens again?" I didn't even respond. I didn't have to. Because I knew that the physical realm was nothing more than an illusion. I knew that the spiritual realm, the infinite realm, was and would always be the more beautiful and more intelligent realm to exist in. I knew this because the aliens knew this. I was filled with the greatest feeling I have ever felt. It was the greatest experience I had ever experienced. It was better than anything real. Better than anything here. I then knew to myself that I had become addicted. Physically, no, but my mental mysticism and desire was so intensely obsessed about what was going on. For the remainder of the night, I listened to some trance techno for a few hours, and then I fell asleep like a baby. And I recall having some very intense dreams, with memories of seeing the aliens while I was asleep. When I awoke, my roommate had come back and was so curious, so concerned about what had happened. "Dude, what the hell happened last night?" I remembered his exact words as being. "Look at this crazy text he'd sent me." I looked at his phone and smiled, even though I should have been freaked out. It was a text from me that said, "We have shown your friend everything he needs to know. We want you too. It goes without saying that I did not remember texting that at all. My friend was starting to worry and kind of freak out. What is going on, man? Is this really happening? Are these things really happening to you, or are you messing with me? I looked down, now confused once again. Is this even real? Do I even know what real is anymore? What is really happening to me? I think I'm either actually discovering the secrets of the world, or slowly slipping into insanity. Oh my. That night, I sat there, looking at it. Looking at the DMT loaded in the pipe, ready to go. What should I do? I thought. I have to get back to where I was. They told me I could go back whenever I wanted. It was decided. I did it in the same place, around the same time, with the same dose. Energy began to flow like before. Alien telepathic communications were strong. I began to look up and close my eyes, only to be shot back into that mystical alien spaceship that I was in before the hyperspace heaven. I was on one of those machines that carry stuff in like a factory, being rolled through some kind of processor data analyzer machine, seeing the aliens all around me, looking down upon me, angrily. They were so intimidating, angry, upset, mad at me. But I honestly didn't know why. I was no longer in the beautiful place they had taken me before this, and I was in a more physical realm, but in a different dimension. They were just looking at me, sucking all of the intelligence out of me that they had given me before, angry at me for some reason. I didn't know why. I didn't know what I did. I didn't understand. I was shot out of the spaceship quicker than normal, and I was back to some kind of reality, except my body was once again changing as I looked at it. My hands now were completely monkified, along with big hairy arms. I genuinely felt like I was actually a monkey, and I thought I'd begun to scream like a monkey. I felt lost. I felt like part of my brain was crazy, and I was no longer super intelligent at all. And there was also no more strong, intense euphoria like before either. What had happened? Why? No. Conclusion and final thoughts. After I was completely down, I began to really rethink reality and what has happened to me in the last week. Perhaps it was time for me to leave the substance alone for a while. I need a week or so to settle down, think about what has happened, try and figure out what was going on. I needed help, I thought. Not from a doctor though, I wasn't completely crazy yet. I'm still more or less in touch with my own reality, but I'm very well beginning to question reality like no other time in my life. I feel as though that I have broken through to another level of the DMT experience. That I have gone on to a level past DMT, made contact with the other side, like they had connected to me. The things that had been happening to me were nothing like a drug. Nothing like LSD or anything like it could ever do what this has done. Not even close. This substance was something else. A key to our chemical structure, a key to our DNA, the key to life itself. I thought that I'd been living in a science fiction horror movie, and I was quite possibly on the edge of going insane. I just really don't know what to think about all of this. I just thought I'd talk a little bit more about this report, as reading it has really triggered an insight that has been brewing within me for quite a long time now, having sort of honed in on a lot of DMT entity experiences, reading more into UFOs and aliens in the most unbiased, grounded, open-minded way I possibly can, which, let me tell you, is quite hard when it comes to an intense of a rabbit hole as aliens and UFOs and DMT entities, like what they are, what's the connections, why there's so many parallels. And at first I thought, oh, I think there's just some cute similarities between meeting DMT entities and sort of the alien abductions, UFO encounters that people very much seem to have once you sort of like delve deeper into all of this. There's just too much anecdotal evidence throughout history, modern times, to dismiss it all as just being mumbo jumbo or schizophrenic people experiencing distortions of reality. Very much seems to affect more people than we realise, and it doesn't just happen in the US or Russia or Brazil, sort of the big three places where you hear about all these abductions and UFO crashes, alien encounters. It really is all over the world and has been happening throughout history forever. We've always been talking about things flying above us in the sky, these orbs, these ships, coming in a complete different variety of forms, as well as different forms of aliens, species, more physical type beings. People talk about reptilians, greys, and then more like energy beings, which are more akin to the type of creatures, beings that people see on DMT. Whether these things are imagined by the brain, whether these things are imagined by consciousness, whether they're physical beings inhabiting a body, I don't really know. But what I want to talk about here is, I do believe now, personally, from all the pieces that I've put together through it, reading about this and just trying to experience it myself on psychedelics and just in my own general life. Sometimes I'll just be out in the garden, I'll be laying on the grass, I'll be looking up at the sky, and there's so many things I see that genuinely are unidentified to myself. I'm not saying they are all giant alien spaceships, but when you look up at the sky for an extended period of time, you just realise how much bigger, how much more complex this thing is than humans currently understand. We probably only understand 0.0001%. We may as well understand absolutely nothing. But yeah, to get to the bread and butter of what I'm on about, it seems that human consciousness is not exactly restricted to just being a human. It seems that stuff like DMT can sort of enlighten you to the fact that you can break out of this human consciousness and actually become an alien yourself in some respect. Because as you discover more about psychedelics and yourself, the mind, consciousness itself, it seems that the brain is just one way of consciousness expressing itself, and that there are higher levels of ways for consciousness to express itself, such as an alien being. And that maybe these aliens that people see in the craft, the sort of manipulating space-time in a way that doesn't seem like naturally physical, and obviously there's many reports of people actually touching the material of alien spacecrafts as sort of like a bismuth, that it's like this memory material that like you squeeze the material into your hand, it becomes infinitely small or whatever, or into a small like atomic point, you release it and then it just like expands out, throwing it on tables, it becomes a table. And that's one way of them manipulating space-time. It's sort of like a material that like rejects gravity so that it can move via its own will. Now, whether there is a connection between consciousness and the material, because this material is very much not like any sort of physical metal that we understand, even though it can take the form of that, it seems to me that some form of aliens that come to Earth, I believe personally that there are sort of, well, there could be physical aliens that are so unbelievably technologically advanced, and it could be a point that we reach in like many thousands of years in the future, that they can literally bend time and space and appear at any point in the space-time continuum that they want, which sort of ties into Jacques Vallée's ideas of aliens being some form of time-traveling humans, or time-traveling beings from another planet, where it's like there's no physical sort of mode of transport that's happening. It's literally just like they're thinking themselves into a point in the universe. So they're not actually traveling from A to B. They can literally just go anywhere at will. And maybe this sort of explains the sort of zipping around aspect, because it's literally manipulating like one point in space-time to another point in space-time. Sort of like they've mastered the idea of string theory, where they can go from one end of the strings to another end of the string just by sort of willing it. And it very much seems that we've always got like a connection to these aliens, but we're restricted from understanding that through our physical limitations. And when you sort of strip away them physical limitations by breaking through on DMT, you can sort of see that like classic meme of the aliens are literally behind us at all times, they're literally above us all the time. And when you sort of unlock your mind, you can see what's going on behind the scenes. And it almost ties into the idea that maybe the aliens literally are us. The aliens are manifesting themselves through the physical realm, that is sort of like engineering in a sense. I'm going to sound absolutely crazy to people right now, but this is just fun speculation. I'm not saying any of this is true. I just enjoy talking about this sort of stuff. It's like you're not really meeting or channeling aliens in itself. You literally are becoming the alien. This guy even says in the report that he went from sort of feeling like a monkey, a physical being, to actually looking like an alien himself. Because, again, talking about that meme before, people have that idea of like when you die, there is no actual physical end to life. It's like you just then become a higher consciousness and realize that you've been manipulating reality this whole time. That life as an illusory thing is something that's being made by an alien consciousness just for fun. Because there's often talks about like, people talk about God consciousness and the Godhead. Maybe that is like the very, very, very ultimate source consciousness that creates everything, including the alien consciousness. But that one of the forms or that God wants to take on is actually the alien consciousness, which is engineering the physical realm, and that this sort of level of reality goes on literally forever, and there's higher consciousness beyond aliens, like higher forms of aliens. And this would explain all the different species and that. Something that also interests me as well in this is that the parallel between the DMT aliens sort of like being upset with the guy for seeking out the experience again, because he didn't just leave it. He got the message, but didn't hang up the phone, in the old Alan Watts quote. It's very relevant here, where it's sort of, he understood subconsciously on a level what was going on, and should have sort of been content with the satisfaction of understanding this like extremely bizarre, loopy, but also beautiful realization of the complexity and intricacies of reality that can be obtained via going beyond the human consciousness. And then he went back to sort of his like egoic state, and then was like, oh well, I need to do it again. And then the sort of karmic payoff was that the aliens were disappointed that he wasn't just sort of satisfied with the insights he'd gained, and that's why it sort of turned into the sci-fi horror angle towards the end. Again, this is just me speculating, but there is also a lot of parallels where, yeah, with this sort of like grey aliens, where they're not really like 100% benevolent. It's almost like they just see like physical reality as a joke, because they see it as illusory. They see that in a sense they are creating it, because aliens will interface with reality so much deeper than a human. They'll be so much more one with reality, which would explain how they can sort of communicate telepathically, because they literally operate with reality so much deeper and more intricately than humans, that they can literally communicate without words. They can do it via their own mind. And this would explain a lot of the sort of telepathic communication that people describe with aliens, just in like the sober human reality, and then the other experiences where the people have DMT and break through. And what was really interesting about this was that, yeah, his breakthrough was not the classic kaleidoscopic sort of Godhead, fractal universe stuff that people describe. It was literally him going to another like realm of existence, a higher dimension. And there is very interesting parallel here between, again, another thing that Jacques Vallée talks about. He's one of like possibly the most iconic ufologists of all time. And things that he's been saying for many, many decades now are sort of starting to come to light again, where people aren't seeing it as like funny green men in a little spaceship that they've invented using some mad technology, which obviously I think that also is possible. But the the classic aliens that we've been seeing sort of throughout history, the ones that have been like sort of above us, hovering, observing us in sort of like a zoological aspect, actually are more related to consciousness than they are physicality. In the sense that, so there's been experiences that people talk about, and you should go look this up. Chocolate talks about it a lot. There's this new Jesse Michaels documentary where he talks about it. Sorry, I got a fucking frog in my throat. Where people go into these spaceships, they're abducted, and sort of they see it as like, physically from their point of view, they see the spaceship as sort of like, I don't know, it's like a giant beanbag in a sense, giant white beanbag. It looks physical, but when they're beamed into the spaceship, they'll go into this space a bit like a TARDIS, where the inside is can be infinitely bigger than what it appears on the outside. People have talked about being in some kind of amphitheater. There's ideas of, well, there's the notion of being in this sort of like surgical environment. People have talked about going into the alien spaceships, seeing the sort of grey aliens or other type of alien beings with the classic big eyes and the big head and sort of small stature, weird little three-fingered hands and that. And then also by the side of them, in the spaceship, they've seen like sort of advanced humans that sort of look like the stereotypical Anunnaki type humans. They almost look like humans from the future, where it seems like our physical evolution is guiding us so towards. This ties into sort of like the time-traveling human aspect. Whatever the truth is, it seems like it's pointing more towards this idea, or the truth, of reality being one infinite being, one infinite thing, one infinite membrane that's connected to itself through everything else. And that, yes, reality is ultimately one. And that these alien beings can interface with reality to sort of embody that oneness more than humans can, because in human, the whole shtick of the human experience is that we experience separation from another thing to experience ourselves individually. But the aliens are sort of like this giant alien hive mind that can manifest itself physically as an individual alien that, even though it is individual and separate, it still has a greater control over reality and a greater ability to manipulate it through its own will. People have talked so much about this idea of being able to manipulate reality like a god, creating your own literal universe and realms and experiences to have without being limited by sort of physicality, where it's like the brain, the design of the brain allows the human experience to have that limitation to experience itself in a finite manner. And that's why I don't subscribe to materialism, because how can you have an experience of infinity by going beyond consciousness via meditation, contemplation, sober awakening, psychedelics, alien abductions? How can the finite mind simulate infinity? Surely it would be the other way around. Infinity is simulating the finite experience. To me, that's why it isn't just brain stuff. It's just the brain stuff is just appearance to keep the consistency of a finite reality. It's not that infinity is completely imagined. It's that infinity is the absolute truth to what is going on. So yeah, there is really no limitation on what consciousness can explore. Take salvia, you can experience what it's like to be a fucking pen. Take DMT, experience what it's like to be an alien. There is just no limitation on what consciousness can experience, and that's why, for me, it is infinite. And that, yeah, say, like, I don't know, whether you die and you automatically become the alien that was imagining you, or become the god/alien consciousness that's imagining everything, I don't know. And then maybe you go from there and experience like a higher state of affinity, which obviously the alien is, even though it can interface with reality in a much more unified sense, it still is a sort of separate being. I don't really know, but it would sort of make sense for the trajectory of like conscious evolution to go from being a human to then being an alien to being like, oh, actually, I wasn't a human the whole time. I was actually infinity, and I can be anything I literally want. What do I want to experience next? What's the sort of next logical conclusion to my evolution as a soul or as consciousness? It would be to go exist as this sort of like energy type alien being that can connect with reality in far deeper ways than, say, the last form I had. Although saying last implies that the past ever happened, when really there is only just one thing, and that is the present moment, infinity. Everything is now. Everything has always been now, and that's how it is, and that's how it goes. But I could be wrong, and I don't think I'm right about any of this at all. I just enjoy talking about it. It's a lot of fun. Personally, for me, my approach towards psychedelics and consciousness, spirituality, is less of a hardcore, extreme route, even though I do love learning about the sort of like hardcore, extra dimensional aspects of reality and consciousness and the spiritual path. I also think it's important to just approach this from a sort of fun, down to earth, casual level, because I don't want to alienate my audience by getting too wishy-washy, out there, wacky, that sort of approach to it, where like, right, well, this is the truth, this has to be how it is, because I think that alienates a lot of people, and we just have to admit to each other that we don't really know what's going on. But all I think is that consciousness is not limited to being a human at all, and that's probably most of the point that psychedelics are trying to convey to you when you do have these breakthrough experiences. Try to tell you that you aren't just what you are as an ego, you're so much more than that. And another really interesting parallel is that there's a lot of experiences of people talking to the aliens, encountering them, or being abducted, or having experience of UFO and telepathy, or just paranormal experiences where the thing that's communicating them telepathically it sort of is like them on a higher level. They tell them that you may think that we are powerful, but you don't realize how much power you actually have. And it's sort of like the aliens are trying to communicate with us in the most sort of vague, ambiguous fashion, sort of like how gurus and spiritual teachers talk in riddles. They're trying to imply to us that we are them and we are all part of the same thing, and that this whole experience of life and the human journey is just a stepping stone towards consciousness, realizing what it actually is: God, source, universe, the universe, infinity, the entire multiverse, everything that is and always will be. And that's what you sort of really are, underneath all the ego and the separation, the limitation. But you could also just be a fucking brain walking about in a vat. I don't have a fucking clue, mate. So, hope you enjoyed my little addendum to this trip report. I know some people really not dislike the commentaries, but they sort of just want to listen to the trip reports. So, yeah. For anyone who enjoys my extra insights that I add onto this stuff, thanks for sticking around, and I'm definitely going to do a dedicated video talking about the connections between DMT entities and aliens in the future, as I learn more about this myself, have my own experiences, read more into sort of the historical element of alien encounters. There's a great piece of text called UFOs in Classical Antiquity. I'll link that in the description. Definitely suggest reading it, because it just shows you that this sort of shit has been going on forever, and it's way more than just... It's just things in the mind. There's more to all this reality stuff than meets the eye. So, thank you for watching, and have a good day.